All right, so now we're live. So
Alrighty.
Welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. I'm joined today with Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And I'm Yaakov ben Yisrael, also of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And today we're reading Parashath HaAzinu.
And I'm joined by my vegan ice cream sandwich.
And so that will be Deuteronomy 32, and it'll be basically the entire chapter of 32.
And it's a doozy because it's a poetic. It's a poem, so that means you're going to get a lot of words that appear only once, or appear in strange contexts, or a lot of poetic license, shall we say? So a lot of word analysis.
Like this, when we talk about words like this, and you get into poetic chapters, most of this stuff has been forgotten, and we have,
which is ironic because this was a poem that was supposed to be remembered for eternity.
Yeah, really. And
serve as a witness.
We have Hachamim who explain, for instance, talking about the chapter on what particular birds we're allowed to eat and not allowed to eat. The Hakamim realize we don't even know what some of these words mean anymore.
Right.
Due to the exiles, due to the fact that the Israelites were spread out over the world, and a lot of the scholars were killed during the wars and pogroms and so forth over the years.
Thank God we have the oral law to tell us, as written down in the Mishnah and expounded upon in the Talmud or in the Gemara.
Yeah, they don't even do it. But that's why some.
The difference is that when we Karaites don't know, we admit it, and when the rabbis don't know, they just pull it out of their asses.
Yeah.
And then say it's from God or from Moses.
Well, we added up the letters.
Literally, it's the difference.
Equals 85, and when you put the 5 and the 8 together, that makes 13. And of course, you got to put the 3 and 1, so that's 4. So there's really only 4 species of birds that are edible.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's ridiculous. Volky and I were watching this video. He showed me this video of there was I won't even say the name because I don't want to embarrass the guy. I actually know the guy. Many years ago in Jerusalem, I was invited to his Shabbat table. I got into a fight with him, and he threw me out of his house. But he's a Chabad guy, a mystic, and so he has. I've gotten into fights with I think 2 or 3 mystics. I'll tell you another funny story in a second. But he has a video out from Isha Toilet, which is no, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to say Isha Torah, but he talks about Jewish meditation. Jewish meditation says, now sit quietly and take deep breaths and blah blah blah. And if your breath goes away, if you get distracted, just gently bring your attention back to your breath and blah blah blah. And now, instead of focusing on pagan goyish crap, basically, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, like an elephant god with 100 tusks or something like that, we're going to focus on Jewish stuff. And what's the Jewish stuff we're going to focus on? The letter Aleph, which is the first letter in the alphabet, which actually, if you look at it, it looks like 2 yuds and above. And if you add up the gematria of 2 yuds and above, that's 26. That's the name of God. So now let's meditate on that. So that's Jewish meditation. You got it?
People are insane.
They're nuts. And I once many years ago when I used to fix people's computers in Jerusalem, I went to some guy's, a very super, super nice guy. He was a regular client of mine. And I go to his house, and his computer was always breaking because he lived in some poor Haredi neighborhood and was just an old piece of crap. And I said, I kept on telling him, just buy a new computer because you're going to end up paying me more over time than you will if you just throw this piece of junk out and get a new computer. But he refused, and he ended up, I ended up maybe charging him a total of like 2 or 3 computers over the next year or 2. Anyway, that's neat. Fair price as always. But that's neither here nor there. But at any rate, he ran a website. He would always say, my website is, I need it for my website. What was the name of his website? I kid you not. I don't know if it's still online. It was called kosherastrology.com. I kid you not. Or was it Jewish astrology? Jewish astrology. I think it was called kosher astrology and I was like, I was just getting into Qara'ism at the time, and I was very, very outspoken. I tried to explain the irony in this, but he didn't want to hear it, so I just went there and fixed his computer and took my money. That was it. But
anyway,
anywho, we got off the topic.
When it comes to these words that we don't know anymore, there are certain Hakamim, talking about this, when it talks about our food, and they actually say it's better not to eat birds because we really don't know which birds we're allowed to eat or not, because the only two that we absolutely know is the dove and the pigeon.
No, but now we have the great contribution of the great Chacham Al, the greatest Baba ever to live in the history of all of Qara'ism, from the time the movement was created until now.
Meir
Who was proven, yes, Meir Rachavistan, who has proven beyond a doubt his greatest contribution ever to Qara'ism, that the chicken is kosher, and now we can all eat chickens in peace. Very relevant for me as a vegetarian. All right, yes. Anyway,
the point is, Karaites tend to admit when they don't know, and we're also pretty careful. It's better to avoid something just if you don't know, out of precaution, than to invent something new and say, "Oh, well, this is how we arrived at it."
Absolutely.
And so, anyway, this chapter is the.
Wait, Yaakov, I got one more mystic story for you. Okay, I kid you. I just got to tell the story. We got to make this thing a little bit entertaining. Maybe people will more people start showing up. So I was new in Jerusalem, and I just started learning at Esha Toilet, and I'm sorry, Esha Torah, and oops, bad Chacham. Don't do that again. Okay, so I just started learning at Esha Torah, and I was invited over to this mystic who was doing a very special Havdalah, okay, in the old city. So I go over to this mystic's house. He's a Kabbalist, and I go over this mystic's house, and I'm sitting there at the table, and it's I don't know what it was, like 7:30 at night, right? And the guy just goes into a meditative state for like 45 minutes, and I'm like, sitting there like, okay, it's like 10 minutes. All right, that's cool. Are you going to come out of the meditative state so we can finish off with the Havdalah and we can all go home? Maybe I want to go out with my friends and get some pizza in the old city or something like that. No, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. I think it was like 45 minutes. And finally, I'm like, I just can't stand this anymore. Like, this is the most boring, horrible, unproductive Havdalah I've ever had in my life. I'm just watching some mystic, sit around meditating for 40 minutes. I don't really give a damn anymore. I just want to get the hell out of here. So basically I excused myself right in the middle of this guy's meditation, and I just said, I'm sorry, I have to go. And I just, walked up and walked out, and all the students were looking at me like, how dare you, how you're going to miss the great revelation that this.
What revelation?
And I just kept on thinking to myself, what a selfish ass. He's holding us here for 45 minutes in his stupid mystical Havdalah, this great Kabbalist, and I wanted to get home, and I'm sure other people wanted to get home as well. They probably just didn't have the guts to get up and walk out, but they should have.
One of the most useless and harmful things that came out of Rabbinic Judaism is Kabbalah. And, this mystic garbage, and that's all it is garbage. And you have people who are so brainwashed that they're afraid. They're actually terrified. In fact, whenever you look at what Rabbinic Kabbalah and this mystic nonsense comes up with, they have the same concepts of heaven and hell that most Christians have, and you slowly come to the realization that Christianity developed from Rabbinic Judaism. And
very, very possibly, or both share a common source, whether it's Zoroastrianism or Greek paganism or God knows what. There's so much going on at that time in that area. It's just a mix of cultures and religions. It's funny because go ahead.
I read the book of Revelation one time, years ago, and I'm telling you, when you actually read it, that's 100% rabbinic Judaism.
I believe it. And it's funny you should mention that, because I was just speaking the other day with Volky, and he was explaining to me the Christian concept of purgatory. I'm not an expert on Christian doctrine. I know a little bit here and there. And he said, the idea of, most people don't, in some denominations, like the more, liberal or the more forgiving denominations, not everybody go, it's not just heaven or hell. Most people actually end up in purgatory, and you stay in purgatory for 12 months maximum, and people on the outside back on earth can pray. I think it was 12 months, whatever it was, a certain amount of time, and people back on earth can pray for you. They can say prayers for you to release you from purgatory and get you into heaven. And I said, that's exactly what rabbinical Judaism teaches, because they explicitly teach that Gehenna is not forever; it's for a maximum of, I think it's 11 months or 12 months, and that the reason we say that the rabbis, the rabbinical Jews say Kaddish, morning's Kaddish, is because it's called Ilui Nishama, literally the raising up, the lifting up of the soul. Yeah. So by saying this prayer, this Kaddish, you're basically lifting you're lifting the person up out of Gehenna, so that he can, get to his, get to heaven more quickly, or he can avoid the eternal damnation, hell kind of thing. It was exactly the same. Yeah, it was exactly the same. It was exactly the same as purgatory. So, clearly, this is all coming from, overlapping sources. I'm sure the overlapping is very, a very complex tapestry, whether it happened, in the Middle Ages or in the Second Temple period times or before then or whatever, who knows? But, they say, obviously, or this famous book about the Kabbalah called Jewish Mysticism by Gershon Scholem, which I started reading for a while, and it just got so boring I couldn't read it anymore. But basically, he says that Kabbalah is based on Christian mysticism from the Middle Ages, which is, the Zohar was written in, I think, 1294 or something like that in Lyon, and I'm not sure if it's Lyon, France, or Lyon, Spain. I think it was Lyon, Spain, which I've actually visited, and it's clear that there was a lot of Jewish Christian interaction going on in certainly in Spain at that time, very much at that time, and also I'm certain in France. So it's all this overlapping. Anyway,
what struck me the most about the Book of Revelation is in the last part where it talks about what they call the New Jerusalem, and it comes down out of heaven, and the Messiah comes with it. And then it's established upon the earth forever, and that's exactly what Rabbinic Judaism teaches about the new temple, that it'll come out of heaven, completely built with the Messiah. And I don't know if all Rabbinic Judaism teaches that, but I've certainly heard that, and that's one of the reasons why they say you're not allowed to go on the Temple Mount. No Jews allowed to be there. You can't pray there because the Messiah has to come, bring the temple. It'll all be built, and that's how it'll be purified, because it comes out of heaven. And I'm like, that's. But anyway. So let's go ahead and get started on the Parashath. And I guess I'll go ahead and start.
I'm sorry, Yaakov. I had to just take care of something there for a second. Yep, go ahead.
No problem.
So, all right, are we starting?
Yeah. We'll go ahead and start.
All right.
So, chapter 32, verse 1.
And I would like to say right there that already we have our first poetic form, which is adaber, right?
Yeah,
that's usually reserved for.
This is what's called the cohortative, and it's always in the first person, whether it's plural or singular, and it basically expresses a desire or a wish or an intention. And so it says HaAzinu Hashemayim. HaAzinu is imperative hifil form from azin, which means to listen or give ear. So
Right.
he's basically saying, cause the heavens to pay attention or to give ear.
Mm-hmm.
Because
May the
I want
heavens,
to
let the
something.
heavens, let the heavens listen, or let the heavens give ear, right? Mm-hmm.
Because I want to say something. I have this desire to say something. And then we have Tishma Ha'aretz. Now, this is what's called the Jusiv. This is in the third person, whether it's singular, plural, masculine, or feminine. This is the third person feminine form, because Eretz is feminine. So we have Tishma Ha'aretz, and let the earth listen. Imrefi, which means to the speech or to whatever my mouth is saying.
Yep. The sayings of my mouth.
Because we know earlier that God says he's going to call as witness the heavens and the earth against him. So he said, okay, now let the heavens listen and let the earth, or let the heavens give ear and let the earth listen.
And we should also point out here that this is a classic case here of, I guess the technical term would be parallelism, that HaAzinu, Hashemayim v'dabre v'adabera v'tishma ha'aretz imrefi. So if we didn't know, we know what HaAzinu means and we know what tishma means, but if we didn't, that kind of structure where you have a parallel, two parallel phrases, it would show us that those two words are similar. Synonyms, basically. Okay. Verse 2.
So, verse 2. Ya'arov kamatar liqhi tizal katal imrathi kisi'rim ala deshe ki ravivim ala aisav. And so now this word that they use is normally translated as doctrine in most places, but it comes from the verb lakah, which means to take something. So it's whatever is being taken from the speech, which is normally here when we're talking about Moses, is his instruction or his teaching to us. So this is why it's all normally translated as doctrine or whatever is taught. So this is it will drop. Like rain, matar is rain. Tizel katal shall descend like dew, and this is talking about my speech, imrati, my speech. Kisi'arim ale deshe, which here we have to talk about the parallelisms again of rain and dew.
Right.
So you could say that the sa'ir here is talking about like the rain upon the grass, and then you have the raviv, then would be like the dew upon the herbage.
I think revivim is usually understood as another type of rain, though, right? Heavy rain.
Yeah, well, that's just a guess. Yeah, it's just a guess. They don't know.
Vivim.
Yeah. And it's just like Sa'ir. Yeah, that's a guess too.
So clearly, each of the, right, which maybe in a second you could, now that we're recording, you could give your understanding of Sa'ir. But one thing I wanted to say here is we clearly see it. So there are four nouns that are related here clearly to rain/dew. We have matar, we have tal, we have si'irim, and we have revivim, right? And those are all rain.
Yep.
I'll include dew in rain, but those are all rain related.
Has to do with
words.
water, whatever it is.
Right, dripping water. I would like to ask you about or explore further the verb ya'aruf. Is it related somehow to oref?
Well, this is what we talked about once before. The verb arif can mean something that drops, and then you actually have a word, another verb that's spelled the same. These are one of those homonyms I talk about a lot. And this is arif, which means to actually break the neck of something. And actually, you can even go further because it tells you clearly, it uses the same verb when you take and find. It says if you happen to find a dead person, That
Right.
you bring out a cow
Right.
and you basically decapitate it.
Right.
And
Right.
it uses the same verb. And
So you're
so
saying
I've
these are two different. So you're saying this verb here, araf, has nothing to do at all with the breaking the neck or beheading.
Unless you want to talk about lopping the head off as dropping the head.
Nah. No,
I don't know how
agree
they
with you
would
on this
relate.
one. I agree with you on this
Yeah.
one. I agree with you on this one. This is two verbs that
But
happen
you know,
to have the same root, which are not related. Yeah.
Yeah, every language has homonyms. They're spelled the same, they're pronounced the
Right.
same, but they have
Right.
different meanings. And you
Right.
know, sometimes it's cool because sometimes when you look at the infinitives
Yeah.
are different. Just like we talk about the word kara with the aleph or kara with a hey. Sometimes conjugated forms, they're conjugated identically. But when you look at the infinitive form, you say likro for to read and likra to meet. And so so sometimes it's a little bit difficult to figure out which one's going to be used. But normally you can figure it out by context. So verse 3, Ki Shem Adonai Ikra.
So
Havu Godel Leloheinu. Because I will call upon the name of Adonai. And so bring greatness to our God. Havu, which means to bring.
Yep. Gives. Right. Bring Godel Elohim. I just want to see any points I want to make here. No, I guess so. I guess that's it. Okay, so this form is in verse 2, just going back for a second. Kisirim alei desha. This alei is again a poetic form of al.
Yeah, well, you know, the original form of the verb al had a aleph on the end of it. And whenever you look at, for instance, the verb ab, and some linguists will say that that's left over from what's called case endings, because you have like avi. Where does the yod come from in avi or ahi?
Right.
But for the word al and most other Semitic languages, you actually have an aleph on the end. Now the aleph, in reality, the aleph, the yod, are basically the same letter, which is why in conjugation it changes to hey also. But in most other Semitic languages, you have the ayin, lam, and then what looks like a yod, but it's actually an aleph. So it's ale, and that's how it's spelled. So this is probably one of the older forms of the word itself, and that's what's used in most what we call the poetic forms of it. But it just means upon.
Okay. All right, sounds fair enough. Yeah. Okay, so verse 4. Hatzur tamim pa'alo. Kikol deracha mishpat. El emuna ve'en avel. Sadiq ve'yashar hu. So, all right, I will try to render a translation here. Hatzur, the rock. Tamim pa'alo, his actions, it's really action pa'alo, but his actions are perfect or innocent or pure. He called the Rachab Mishpat, because, and I'll translate that as, and all of his ways are just, or justice. El Emunah, he's a God of faith. In Avel, there's no misdeeds or no evil.
Inequity. This is a cool word. Basically, it means he's fair. He's not unequal. Inequity talks about being for one more than the other, but he's completely just, and you won't find inequity. In fact, it talks about balances. Whenever we look at scale, the balances we're supposed to use. We're not supposed to use the different scales of avil, which means unequal or inequitous balance scales.
Okay, that's interesting. Tzaddik Uyashar, who he is righteous and honest or straightforward, straight. That's it. So far, so good.
Let me see if I can find that verse real quick. About the
yeah, that would be good. Yeah, avil is usually just translated as evil or iniquity. Yeah. Let's see here what they say. Unrighteousness.
So,
just give me 1 second. Right there.
So it says, "Lo fa'asu avil b'mishpat b'midda b'mishkal b'misora mozene sedek avene sedek efet sedek wahim sedek yihi lechem ani Adonai Elohechem." And so that's what it's talking about. You should not be inequitous in judgment, your balances, scales, all of it's got to be right. There's another one that actually has a better one.
All right, sounds good.
You shall not have a bag of different weights, large and small. And this is just the first one was in Leviticus. This was in Deuteronomy, talking about the same basic thing. It says, "Lo yiheh lecha b'chesed lecha even wa'aven gadola v'katana." So it's saying you shall not have in your bag different stones, one great and one small. Lo yiheh lecha b'veitecha efa wa'efa gadola v'katana. And you shall not have in your houses ephah, which is basically a measure, great and small. But eben shlema was sedek yihelach, but you shall have a perfect stone and a right stone you shall have. Ephah shlema was sedek yihelach, and a perfect in or a whole and righteous ephah you shall have. So cool. So anyway, that's Avin.
Right. Cool. All right.
So verse 5. Shehait lo banav mumah. Dor iqeish u'fital Torah.
Yeah, this is a tough verse. I actually, many years ago, I wrote a letter or an essay, and I include this verse, and I looked at it, studied extensively back then, and this verse has always been kind of very difficult to translate. But I'm curious to hear your translation of it.
Yeah, the Shehait Lo has to do with something that has been completely corrupted or destroyed. In fact, we see it first used in the days of Noah, where it says the whole world has been corrupted because of the Hamas of the children of man.
Yeah.
And so it says Shehait Lo. And so basically this is like a question. Does he have Shehait? Is he corrupt? Lo, no. The Na'abumam is his children who are defective. Dur Ikesh, which means a twisted generation, Ufatol, which is completely perverse. The word Patal, that's another word that you have different uses of, but one of them is twisted. And that's where you get the word Patil, which means a twisted cord. But that's the way I understand it. Shechet lo, it's kind of like a question. Has he? Lo means for him, or he has. Shechet, which means corruption. Is he corrupt? Lo. Benav mumam is his children. It's basically the same as if you would say ki im benav. Rather, it's his children who are defective. Mumam.
So, so you see the shechet lo question mark answer lo banav mumam period dor ikesh u fital tol.
Yeah,
that's what you see. Now,
when in fact when you look at the Tami Hamikra, which are what we would call the accent marks, but these are used as punctuation. Now these are basically the suggestions of the Masoretes. So, but that's how they would have understood verse. So when you have Shehait Lo, that's actually the first disjunctive accent. This is what's called the Tavir, but it's a minor disjunctive. The one greater than it is what's called the Tipachal, which is on the low. So you have Shehait Lo, which is a clause by itself, and you have Lo, which is also a clause by itself, and then you have Banav Mumam, which ends that part of the verse. And so you have two separate clauses at the beginning. Shehait Lo, Lo. And that's how you would have the pauses. And so that's the way you would look at it. Is he corrupt, or has he corruption? No, it's his son.
But you're saying shechet. You're saying shechet is a noun.
Shechet. I think so. Shechet would probably be
because
that's actually a verb. That's a PL.
Right. So what does that mean? Shechet lo.
Shechet is has he corrupted, or is he corrupted, or is it corrupted for him, or however? But
did it corrupt
you could
for him?
say
Shechet lo.
It could
it's just
go
a very
back
strange
to,
form. It's just a very strange form.
Well, it could go back to because it's actually masculine in form. And we were talking about two different things, the Pa'al and the Derek, which, so you could be talking about, is it his ways and his actions that are corrupt? Still, it's no, because that's the whole point of these two verses, is talking about his ways and his deeds. He is completely just and righteous, a God of faithfulness, who has no inequity. But either way, you would look at it as whatever has something. The lo is definitely a prepositional phrase. To him, was it corrupt? Is it become corrupt for him? No. It's his sons that are defective. And so you look at the last part of that as ki im benam mumam. Rather, when you have, normally you have that in the prose, you would have, when you compare it, it would say ki im. Rather, it is the sons that are correct.
Right. All right.
And you see this in the next verse too. Hala Adonai tikmalu zof am naval v'lo chacham halo hu avicha chanecha hu asecha v'yechonenecha. And so it says, now there's two different ideas about the way this phrase is. The hey is actually an interrogative hey. It doesn't make any difference how you look at it. That's how normally you see it with a hatafatha. But or you can look at the word as how, because the original interrogative particle was, the whole word was how. And that survives even in Arabic today. When you ask a question, you say, you always have it with hal, or you can have it with a simple aleph, and so it's the same way. Or you can look at it as the hey being the interrogative particle, and then for the lama being a preposition. So you see the text sometimes it's written as hal with the mafik, or you see it written as simply ha, and the lama with the as a prepositional prefix. But either way, you're saying, do you ascribe that to God? Are you describing? And some lexicographers equate the word gamal with like the Arabic jamal, which means, and that's where you get the word jamil, to be beautiful. But actually it means to apply a certain quality to somebody. And so you're saying, are you applying or ascribing this quality to God? And the obvious question will be, or answer will be, absolutely not. I'm naval, which means a foolish people, v'lo hacham, without any wisdom. And then here we have again the interrogative particle ha, and then you have lo. So you're saying, is it not who, he, who is your father, the one who made you, or formed you, or even possessed you, depending on how you look at the word kaneh. He is the one who made you and prepared you. Back at the qualities where it says, this is verse 7, Zechor Yamov Olam, Binu Shenot Dor Vador, She'al Avicha, V'yaggedecha, Zekanecha, V'yomeru Lach. So remember the ancient days, or the days of old. And this is interesting because now you have Yamoth, which is a feminine plural, but it's still talking about days.
Right.
You only have in the construct is Yomei. Beinu Shenoth Dor Odor. Understand years of generations of generations. So it's talking about consider or think about the past years. She'al avicha, ask your father, Yagedecha, and he shall inform you. Your elders, and they shall say to you. Now this is interesting, and this is, of course, poetic, but you have lots of Kabbalistic interpretation for it.
Sure.
بهنحل عيون الغيم بحفرذو بني آدم يتسي بجبلوت عمين لمسبار بني Yisrael. And so it says, as the Most High apportioned the inheritance to the nations,
Mm-hmm.
As he at his dividing the sons of Adam, yet save Givolot Amim, he set the borders of peoples according to the number of the sons of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I look at this is actually not talking about the very beginning. Of course, some people say this is talking about when he distributed the people at the Tower of Babel. He numbered the nations according to the tribes of Israel, or the sons of Israel. I personally believe this is just talking about the apportioning of the tribes themselves, and that the Goyim and the Amim are specifically Israel.
All right, let's take a look here. This is a verse that's always interested me as well. Okay, B'hanchel elyon goyim. Okay. Elyon goyim. B'hafrido b'nei adam. Yetsev gvulot amim b'mispar b'nei Yisrael. Yeah, I mean, usually what they say is, I mean, the typical interpretation by the rabbis is that it says that 70 souls went down to Egypt with Yaakov, and that is proof that there are 70 nations in the world. And the rabbis are always talking about the 70 nations, 70 nations, 70 nations in the world. I'm not sure if there's any, I think it does mention a number of times 70 nations in the Tanakh itself, right? Or am I imagining it?
Not that I know of. In fact, when you look at the table of nations, there are actually more than 70 when you actually add them all up, because the nations are clearly stated, were the nations or the Goyim that were separated from the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they had more than 70 people altogether, I think. I could be wrong, but
no, I doubt it comes out. I doubt it. It's like 70,
yeah,
and it's probably 5 different ways to count it also.
Yeah. One thing I like to point out to a lot of people is a lot of people think that only 70 people went down to Egypt, but I disagree with that, because there were more than 70 people, but you only had 70 children of Yaakov altogether. The family of Yaakov consisted of only 70 people, but there were more than 70 people that went down there. And when we look at, for instance, when Avram came from Haran, of course, it only mentioned by name Lot and Sarah, right? Those are the only two that were mentioned by name that went with him. But it said all the people that they had made in Haran. Now, of course, rabbis would say that's converts, but that's not what it is. Avram didn't come down alone with just his wife and his nephew. He actually had servants, and we see this by the time of the Battle of the Kings. He had 318 people that were born in his house. It says specifically they were born in his house that were dedicated
ultimately
to the war.
Ultimately, they're not important, and it's maybe Yaakov had
Right.
slaves.
They weren't counted amongst the 70 family members.
Right.
But it says when Yaakov came down, and he came down with even his animals and everything that he had, servants and all.
Right. And, it's possible he had servants as well. Yeah, but they're not mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's clear that Isaac had those servants. They didn't all go free at the death of Abraham, because it says that the servant who went to get Rivka said, "Hey, look, Abraham left everything to his son Isaac." And
Right.
then when Isaac died, of course, that went to Yaakov. Of course, he had to come back from Laban to
Right.
receive it, but he had it, you know. And so
Mm-hmm.
he didn't just say, okay, well, piss off, all you guys, I'm going to Egypt, you know.
Right.
They all went with
Right.
him.
Mm-hmm. At any rate, so you interpret this verse to be, so if you interpret this verse to mean, okay, so it's clearly, so when God gave the inheritance, when the how would you translate Elyon into English? I can't remember the English word now. When the not Almighty, whatever, the high, almost high God, you know, gave the inheritance to his nations, Afrido b'nei Adam, when he separated, or when he broke into pieces or broke into separations the children of Adam, Yatsev Vulot, and he set down borders, Yatsev Vulot Amim, he set down the borders of nations, the Mispar b'nei Israel. So how do you interpret that? So I think everything is relatively clear up to the Mispar b'nei Israel. So how do you interpret that then?
The Gevalot Amim is talking about the peoples of Israel themselves. And it was
You
those
think it's talking
borders
about the
that
tribes of Israel? Okay.
Yeah. And we'll see later that it's actually by lot that they were to do it. And they were to do it according to the sons of Israel, according to their birth. And that's the actual instruction that was given. And then you see that at the next verse it says, Ki Halech Adonai Amo, because the portion of Adonai is his people. Yaakov Hevel Nachlatho. And Yaakov is the Hevel, which could mean numerous things, but here it means the portion of his inheritance, the specific.
But clearly, verse 8 up until Yatzei Vulot Amim, clearly, but Antrel Elyon Goyim V'Afrido B'nei Adam, that's clearly talking about all of mankind, not talking about Israel.
Well, then, you know, when we look at where it starts, Zechor Yamot Olam, Binu Shenot Dor Vador, She'al Avicha, Vayagedecha, is clearly that Moses is speaking to the Israelites to think about the older days, the days of old, and the years gone by. Ask your fathers. It's talking about the Israelites asking their fathers. It's not the nations asking their fathers about anything. And so he's talking about the distribution of the Israelites in their inheritance. And that's the only inheritance that you see where God actually gave to a people, until you get to the beginning of Devarim, where it talks about Edom having also a Nachalah, their inheritance.
So you're saying that you think that B'Anchel Elyon Goyim B'Afrido B'nei Adam up to there is speaking about Israel?
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. I mean,
I'm
people are free to look at it however they want, but that's
to quote what's his name? Oh geez, I can't. It's one of my favorite movies, but I can't remember the name. But Boston in Office Space. What's his name again? I can't remember. I'm gonna have to kind of go ahead and perhaps disagree with you. You know,
right.
Have to, I don't see from the context there. It's clearly right. I think my opinion is from the context there. This is clearly talking about all of.
So where do you divide?
Humanity.
Where do you divide this at? Because this is a witness being called against the Israelites, and this is specifically talking about the Israelites. And from the very beginning, it's talking about his sons who actually are defective, which we know are the Israelites.
Right.
And then it's telling the Israelites to remember and ask their fathers and their elders who will tell them. You know, and so now all of a sudden we have something completely unrelated to the context before, and then we'll jump back into the original context. And so we have two verses that now are universal in scope amongst a narrative that's talking specifically to the Israelites about something.
I don't think Yeah, but I don't think it's unrelated at all because it's going back before Israel existed and basically
So
saying that
all right, well,
when ask your elders,
right,
ask the old people, and they will tell you that when God separated all of the people and made nations, basically, if I were to paraphrase it, saying he also made this one special nation,
we
Israel.
can go ask the Native Americans and the people down in Australia about the old days. No, they have no knowledge of any of that. The only people that actually passed that on were the Israelites. Of course, the Christians kind of hijacked that and sent missionaries out, which is the only reason they would know about it, because you have to ask an Israelite about it. No other people on the planet
I'm not exactly getting your point, but I think basically what it's saying here is go to the elders.
It's saying ask your father and he'll tell you.
Right.
Okay? So if we're talking about that, he's talking about here at the distribution of all the nations of the world, then
right.
I'm included amongst that. All right. Just say I'm an Australian somewhere, then I should be able to ask my father, and he should tell me about this event. Nobody else has it. Only the Israelites have that record of the event.
1 second here. First of all, it's poetic, but I think it's speaking to the Israelites. No, really, it's a very important point.
They're speaking to Israelites.
Right. It's speaking to Israelites, saying, right, but this is a message to
the only people that have a record of Babel and the distribution of the people around the globe by God or the Israelites. There's no other group of people on this planet that
I don't think it's first of all, that's not necessarily true. We don't know what the ancients had back then. Okay? That's number one.
Whether they have it or not, then we know the Israelites are the only ones who propagated that.
I'm not so sure about that. That's but it doesn't matter. I don't think that's what it's saying. I think it's saying, it's speaking to the Israelites, go to your elders, okay? And they will tell you, basically, here, if the rabbis ever wanted to use a proof of an oral law, here's a proof of an oral law. Because here it's clearly speaking about an oral law, right? And the elders are going to tell you that from the tradition that's been passed down to them, that I think basically what it's saying that when he laid down all of the boundaries, I don't know what the Mispah b'nei Yisrael, but I won't even talk about that part yet. But that basically he laid down these boundaries for all of the nations. It's telling the Israelites to go to their elders, and they will confirm to you that God laid down God
created the world for the Israelites. God created the entire universe.
I don't think that's the case.
The Israelites, that they would dominate the nations and the world would bring the wealth, and that's actually even said in the prophetical writings, that the world's going to bring their wealth and bow down and kiss the feet of the Israelites.
Yes, but that's not what that's not what it's saying here.
It's saying, why not? If we say that it's talking about that, why not?
I just don't see here any evidence that's speaking. I mean, clearly from the language, all it's saying. It's a very simple thing. It's saying, go to your elders.
If you're saying clearly from the language,
why wouldn't the elders
just like it? But that's not the case.
No, why would the elders not know that there's ancient traditions that God separated the entire earth among various nations?
The only elders that are being questioned are the elders of the Israelites. It's
irrelevant because the context, but that's irrelevant because it's within the context of Israel. What are they going to tell the Israelites to go ask the elders in China? Obviously not. It's saying go to your elders, but it
that's could have right. Just go to your elders and ask them
But ask them what? How is that proof that of what you're saying, that the next verse is talking about the land of Israel being portioned to the tribes? You're saying that those elders did not know. The Israelite elders did not know that.
The world itself was not apportioned. It wasn't divided up amongst the sons of Israel.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
Say, okay, China's going to belong to Zebulun. Okay, Australia is going to belong to Simeon. Okay,
but it's not talking about. It's not talking about the children of Israel.
It says that the borders of the nations were set according to the number of the sons of Israel.
According to the number of the sons of Israel. So that could mean, so again, let's go back to the rabbi's interpretation, which I'm not saying is correct necessarily, but their interpretation here is that there are 70 nations in correspondence to the 70 children of Israel that went down to Egypt. That's their interpretation. So
yeah, well, you don't have anything here mentioning about which sons of Israel.
But it's irrelevant. The point that I'm trying to make is whether that it's irrelevant because the point I'm trying to make. Right. Wait a second. Let me make my point.
Well, if it's irrelevant, let's just keep reading the Parashath.
No. No. It's an important point I'm trying to make. The point that I'm trying to make is that
I understand what it
means. Wait a second. The point that I'm trying to make is that according to the rabbinical. You're missing my point, Yaakov. Okay.
No, I understand your point.
I'm trying to make a serious point. That at least the rabbinical interpretation is of this verse, which is admittedly, at least the end part,
it has to do with the Israelites going to Egypt, please. Which is not even mentioned here.
It doesn't matter. Let me speak, please. Let me at least state my point of view. Okay. It's clear that Lemispar ben Yisrael is a difficult phrase to figure out in this context. Okay. Yeah, so I'm telling you what the rabbinical interpretation of this verse is. Okay, because they say, that this verse means that the entire earth was apportioned out into 70 nations as corresponding to the 70 children that went down to children of Israel that went down to Egypt. Now, I'm not saying that 70 is correct. What I'm saying is that the rabbinical interpretation of this verse is that we're talking about the apportionment of the entire earth into nations. We're not talking about the land of Israel into tribes. And I agree with the rabbis on the general idea here that this verse is speaking about the apportionment of the entire world into nations, into borders for the nations. What does it mean, Lemispar ben Yisrael? I don't know. The rabbis didn't know either, which is why they came up with this legend that there are 70 nations which correspond to the 70. Wait, let me finish the point. I'll let you finish your point.
I didn't say anything.
Thank you. That this is why the rabbis come up with this legend that it's 70 there are 70 nations which are in correspondence to the 70 children that went down to Egypt. Of course, it doesn't mention here. That's their interpretation. That's their interpolation. Okay, and I'm not saying I agree with that, but what I am saying is that I am agreeing with the basic rabbinical interpretation here that we're talking about the division of the entire land of the world into nations. Okay. According Lemispar ben Yisrael, whatever that means, I don't know. That's one of those confusing phrases which I personally don't have an answer for, and neither do the rabbis apparently, which is why they make this legend up. Okay, but I think it's clear from the language here. Okay, because it's Bantchel Elyon Goyim. Okay, is always speaking about the other nations. I don't think you ever hear the tribes being called Goyim. Where are the tribes called Goyim? You're going to talk about Abraham being Av Lahamon Goyim?
No. It talks about also. Okay, I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm not.
Where are the tribes called
Goyim? I'm not
Goyim?
as great a Hakham as you that I can pop this off the top of my head.
Not.
But I will definitely provide it for you. I know for a fact it's there, and you yourself, I have you on video where we talked about this before. Okay, so I have that video where we talked about Goy.
Even if so.
Also, Am is also used not always in relation to all the other nations.
No, Goy can be, Goy, you're missing my point. Goy can be used to refer to the nation of Israel. No, you're misunderstanding me. But it can't be referred, but you're saying that, but you're saying it's used to refer to an individual tribe. There's nowhere that I can recollect anywhere in the Tanakh that an individual tribe of Israel is called a Goy. The entire nation of Israel is called a Goy, but not an individual tribe of Israel. It's never called a Goy. That's number one, okay? Number two, okay, so when it says the Goyim, it's always speaking about all the nations. Yes, Israel is a Goy. It's a Goy Gadol, right? It's in here, I'll rattle off a chapter verse. Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 4, verse 6, or is it 6, verse 4, where it speaks that we read a couple of weeks ago, where it speaks about I can't remember the phrase. It doesn't matter, okay? The point is, yes, Israel is a Goy, okay? Israel is a nation, but you're saying that this is referring to the individual tribes. Bantchel Elyon Goyim, when he apportioned out to the individual tribes. That I can't remember any place where an individual tribe is called a Goy of Israel. That's number one, okay? Number two, afterwards it says, V'hafrido b'nei Adam, when he separated b'nei Adam. B'nei Adam always refers to all of the children of man. B'nai Adam, the children of man, of Adam. That's referring to all of humanity. So there's no textual context here for it referring to the apportionment of the land of Israel to the 12 tribes. Okay? Yatzeh Gvulot Amim. Again, we're talking about Amim. Amim is always referring to all of the nations. So we have three phrases here which seem to be referring to all of the nations. And then we have this phrase, L'mispar b'nei Yisrael. Who the heck knows what that means? I don't know. I'm just telling you that at that point, all I'm doing is bringing the rabbinical interpretation or understanding the rabbinical interpretation, because they're saying that you have 70 children of Israel who went down to Egypt, that they're using that, and they're saying that there are 70 nations, or they're using that as proof that there are 70 nations, that they're saying that they're basically confirming my interpretation of the verse, not regarding the 70 nations of the 70 children of Israel, which I'm not agreeing with. They're confirming that from their point of view, my general interpretation of the verse, which is this is speaking about the division of the entire world into nations, not speaking about the division of the land of Israel into tribes. That's all I have to say. And then the way I would interpret it is perhaps the rabbis are right, or basically what it's saying is, in a general sense, okay, is when go ask your elder. This is the way I would paraphrase these couple of lines in a general sense. Go ask your elders, okay? Has this, what happened? God separated all of the world into nations, and then he chose one special nation, which is Israel. That's what these verses are saying. I don't see it saying anything else. Okay. Yaakov fainted because he's not answering, and my interpretation was so perfect and good that he actually fainted on the spot. Oh, he's moving
However, again. I don't care.
No, that's fine. You're entitled to interpretation.
Yeah, yours is just as good as any other.
It's not good. It's not good or bad. Let you be right. If you're right, I'll be the first one to admit it. But I just don't see that here.
Yeah, and it's okay.
I don't see that here. I think the context is clearly
that's normal. We don't have to agree.
That's right.
I disagree, but
right.
That doesn't mean I'm right.
But I will bring a challenge to you, and maybe you will find one obscure verse somewhere where poetically it's calling a tribe a goy. But I can't think. Maybe with Ephraim and Manasseh, he will be a greater. I'm trying to think back in Genesis when he switches the hands. Does it use the word goy there? Perhaps. Yeah. But I don't think that in general the context when it speaks about the word goy is speaking about the tribes of Israel. It's speaking about the various nations, Israel being one of them. Okay, that's it. I've said what I have to say. So, the end. You can move on if you want, or if you want to respond. Then.
No, it's okay. Right. I'm not going to waste time arguing about it.
All right. Yeah. Verse 9. I would also like to refer for 1 second, because the reason I wasn't jumping on the previous verses, I was trying to download here. I always like this Robert Alter version of the Torah, and I would like to just get his interpretation.
Who is Robert
very,
Alter?
very smart man.
You said you've used him before. Who is he?
He's a biblical studies. I mean, I think he does more than biblical studies, but his expertise is biblical studies. I think he's a professor at UC Berkeley, was it, or something like that, somewhere out west. And he's written a number of books, and this book, I don't know, I guess people like it, or it's become popular even among some of the more liberal Orthodox Jews over the past couple of years, and he knows his stuff. Let's put it that way. Just like one person always likes to point to Everett Fox and use his translation. This is the translation I like to use because he's a very intelligent person. He clearly knows the Tanakh very well, and he's not coming from a rabbinical point of view. He's coming from a biblical studies point of view. So I go to him as a go-to to clarify things that I'm trying to get interpretations on. So let me just see if I can find it here. Although it's very difficult to navigate these pages. Deuteronomy. Just give me 1 second. No, it went all the way back. I don't even know how to get this page. All right, let's see here. Chapter 24. Just bear with me 1 second. Deuteronomy. Oh my God, this is just hardly set up online. Chapter 3. Now I went back to the beginning again. I don't understand this. 1 second.
Technology.
I'm telling you, it's really horrible. All right, I guess I have to use these stupid arrows. Chapter 6. Go ahead a little bit. Let's do that. Just give me 1 second here. Chapter 25. We're getting closer. Let's go even further. And that's the end of the whole book. All right. So let's go back. Chapter 34. Here it is. Chapter 33. Chapter 32. Here it is. Chapter 32. And I will just, at this point, did I just lose it again? No, did I? No, I didn't. I see. I will just do it like this. Okay, 1 second. Let's do it again. Let's place that. All right. So it says, this is his translation. It's a translation interpretation. Give ear, O heavens, that I may speak, and let the earth hear my mouth's utterances. Let my teaching drop like rain, my saying flow like dew, like showers on the green, and like cloudbursts on the grass. For the name of the Lord do I call. Hail greatness for our Lord, for our God. The rock, his acts are perfect, for all his ways are justice. A steadfast God, without wrong, true and right is he. Did he act? No. And by the way, he agrees with you there. Question. Did he act honestly? Question. No. His son's the fault. A perverse and twisted brood. The Lord will require thus, base and unwise people. Is he not your father, your shaper? He made you and set you unshaken. Remember the days of old. Give thought to the years of times past. Ask your father that he may tell you, your elders that they may say to you, when Elyon gave estates to nations, when he split up the sons of man, he set out the boundaries of peoples by the number of the sundry gods. That's what he interprets as. I don't know why the sundry gods, but there is a footnote here.
Because it says Beni Elohim in some.
Uh-huh.
I think it's the Septuagint that says Beni Elohim.
Why would you go with the Septuagint? Well, let's see. There's a footnote here, and he'll probably explain it. Okay. So, oh, shoot. I'm going to do that now. Oh, I see. So, all right. And let me see what it says here.
Or maybe footnote. According to the angels of God. All right.
Now let me go to the footnotes here. And footnotes, he says here. This is what he says. When Elyon gave estates to the nations, Elyon, the High One, is the sky god of the Canaanite pantheon, who appears to have been assimilated into biblical monotheism as an epithet for the God of Israel, whatever. See comment on Genesis, blah, blah, blah. The use of this designation here probably reflects the antiquity. Okay, this is irrelevant. By the number of the sundry gods. The Masoretic text here reads, the Mispar of Bnei Israel, by the number of the sons of Israel. It is hard to make much sense of that reading, though traditional exegetes tried to do that by noting that Jacob had 70 male descendants when he went down to Egypt, and that there are, at least proverbially, 70 nations. This translation adopts the reading of the text found at Qumran, which seems close to the Hebrew text used by the Septuagint translators, the Mispar B'nai Elohim. This phrase, which appears to reflect a very early stage in the evolution of biblical monotheism, caused later transmitters of the text theological discomfort and was probably deliberately changed in the interests of piety. In the older world picture registered in a variety of biblical texts, God is surrounded by a celestial entourage of divine beings or lesser deities, B'nai Elim or B'nai Elohim, who are nevertheless subordinate to the supreme God. The Song of Moses assumes that God, in allotting portions of the earth to various peoples, also allowed each people its own lesser deity. Compare Moses' remark about the astral deities in Deuteronomy 4:19. That's his comment. So clearly the guy knows his stuff. That's number one, right? But number two, his interpretation is also in line with it being broken up to various nations. Doesn't mean he's right, but that's his interpretation. He's my go-to translator when I'm in doubt.
Okay.
So, all right, that's all. I think I just wanted to make my point. Whether I'm right or wrong, I just wanted to make my point, and I did. So that's it.
It's possible.
But it's interesting what you're saying. So in Qumran, and which seems close to the Hebrew text used by Septuagint translators, and in the Septuagint it says "L'mispar b'nei Elohim." So I would like to go back there and just reinterpret that. So, Ba'antchel Elyon Goyim, Ba'afrido B'nei Adam, Yatsev Gvulot Amim, Lemispar B'nei Elohim. Yatsev Gvulot Amim, Lemispar B'nei Elohim.
And the number of the sons of God, if we're talking about that, they're angelic beings, or however you want to look at it. How do you even put a number? That would be like saying that it's innumerable nations with innumerable borders, and that's possible too. Then there's actually no number that you can actually put to it. It's just however many you want to come up with is fine.
Now I'm curious if it's somewhere in the Tanakh. I'm curious if somewhere in the Tanakh it does mention 70 nations. For some reason, I think it does, and if I remember correctly, it says it in Job, but I could be wrong. I could just be making it up out of my head because the rabbis have brainwashed me, and I think that's what I'm doing because I'm Googling it right now, 70 nations, and it's a list of the 70 names. I don't know. All right, I'm not going to go through it now. All right, it must be mine now. At any rate.
Right here. 70 nations. I'll just put 70 in the search and see what it comes up with.
Right, I got you.
70.
That's a good way to do it.
70. No. Well, there's only 5 pages of it, so.
Forget it. It's not that important, really.
You have 70 shekels. You have a lot of 70 shekels. You have 70 shekels everywhere.
70 shekels.
Man, there's something mystical about 70 shekels.
But I don't get where's 70. I don't remember anywhere being mentioned 70 shekels. Where?
Yeah, I'll read it to you.
Oh, I believe you. I just don't remember.
This is at the offering of the tribes, various tribes, giving the teruma. It says Korbanu Ka'arat Kesef Ahath Shiloshim Umi'ah Mishkala Mizrach Ihad Kesef Shid'in Shekel Bishekel HaKodesh Shneihem Meleim Soleth Belula Vashemen Limincha. This is this just has to do with the teruma of the Israelites when they were giving whatever it was they were giving to the Mishkan.
All right. All right.
70 kings. Wow, we got 70 kings in Israel. Another 70 shekels. Yeah, I don't see anything about 70 nations. No, I don't see. I'll look again later. But I don't see it right off top.
All right.
It's not
important.
But it doesn't matter. Who in the world keeps writing me in the middle of this? Okay. Okay, so where are we? Oh, verse 9. Ki halech Adonai ammo, because the portion of God is his people. Yaakov hevel nahlato, and Yaakov is the portion of his inheritance. And this is interesting because hevel It's talking about something that binds it together, some cable.
Right.
And so it's Yaakov who is actually what binds the inheritance together, because they're all the sons of Yaakov.
Mm-hmm.
It's the land of Israel itself. Being divided.
Mm-hmm. Wait, let me just see this for a second. Chelek Yehovah Amo, Yaakov Hevel Nachlato. So Hevel also means that, at least in modern Hebrew, and I'm assuming the modern Hebrew took it from the ancient Hebrew, Hevel means like a strip of land. So I'm trying to think.
It's like a portion. It's used as a portion.
Right. So, so Hevel I can't remember in modern Israel they call a number of different areas Hevel, but I can't remember offhand which ones. But at any rate, so I think it's clear here that it's okay. Let me just read this one. ומספר בני ישראל, כי חלק יהוה עמו, יעקב חבל נחלתו. כי חלק יהוה עמו, I mean, I still don't get that phrase in the מספר בני ישראל, but here it's clearly I just don't get it. Yeah, I just don't get it. But in verse 9, it's clearly contrasting. It's clearly contrasting this division of the. I don't want to go back into the previous argument, but the way I'm seeing verses 8 and 9 is contrasting the previous division of all of the nations. They getting their portions of the land of the earth. But Yoah's portion is his nation. Yaakov Hevel Nachalato. Yoah's portion and Yoah's inheritance. Yoah's special inheritance is Israel. That's basically what it's saying. So it's contrasting. Okay, all the nations got their portion, but there's one special portion that belongs to Yoah, and that's the nation of Israel. And that's, again, just to go to Robert Alter again. Yes, the Lord's portion is his people. This affirmation stands in contrast to the preceding statement that God has allotted different deities to the sundry peoples. The Lord has made Israel a special possession through his acts of historical providence towards them, and thus Israel must worship the Lord alone. Okay. So that's it. Anything you want to add about that verse?
Nope.
Okay. All right, verse 11. Kanesher Yair Kino al Gozlav.
We're in verse 10.
Oh, did I skip one? I'm sorry. Verse 10. Yimtsa'ehu be'eretz midbar u'betohu Yilel Yishimon Yisovavehu Yevonenehu Yitzranehu Kishon Eno. Okay, so he found him. God, in other words, God found Israel, the Eretz Midbar, right? This is repeated a number of times throughout the Tanakh, but he found them in the desert. He found him in the land of the desert, or the land of the wilderness. B'tohu Yilel, in a wailing, I don't know how we translate tohu here. Yeah, wailing desolation.
Tohu is in a wasteland. Tohu is a wasteland. Yeshimon is in a howling, desolate place.
Howling desolate wasteland, yeah.
Yeah.
Or howling desolate. I don't know. It's hard to find words in English to translate these. But you're saying tohu stands alone. It's not tohu, and then it's Yilel Yishimon. But midbar, but tohu.
Tohu. That's actually a disjunctive. Then you have Yilel Yishimon, which is a cause.
You got it. And then you have the nachta. Yilel Yishimon. Got it. Yisovnehu.
He surrounded it.
Yevonenehu. Yitzranehu Kishon Enav. Okay, so he surrounded him. and he, I don't even know how I would interpret this here.
You can say he built
Yevonehu.
him up, or you can say he regarded him.
Okay.
Either way will be fine.
Okay. Yitzranehu.
He protected
I'm going to go
him.
with, yeah,
This is
for
from
created.
Natsar.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is Natsar. Natsar is the
Natsar.
synonym for Shamar.
Yeah, Nitzor, right, exactly. Mm-hmm. Got it. Yitzranehu ki ishon enav. Okay, so wait a second. Let me see this. Yimse'ehu be'eretz midbar uvetohu. Comma. Yilel ishimon. Howling wasteland. Yisovavenhu. He surrounded him. Yevonehu. And that one I'm still not clear on. What would be the translation for Yevonehu there? Let's see here. Pointing.
I would say he regarded him, or he took notice of him.
Got it. Like the Bonain or Davin. Okay, that makes sense. Let me just see it. English translation here. Go to the NIV for a second. Shielded him and cared for him. Okay. All right, got it. No, Yevonehu. He took regard of him. He understood him or took regard of him. Okay. Yitzranehu from Nitzor, right? Mm-hmm. Protected him, guarded him. Kishon enav, like they usually translate Ishon eno as the apple of his eye. But I guess Ishon very specifically means, what is the Ishon?
Little man is a diminutive of Ish.
Uh-huh. Is it really?
Yeah. The little man of his eye.
No, are you being serious?
No, that's serious. Ishon is a diminutive of Ish.
And how would that come to mean pupil of an eye?
Because I don't know. You have the same phrase in Arabic, insan ayn, which means the man of his eye, or however. But it basically is how we would say the apple. Where's an apple in the eye? There's not an apple in the eye either. But
right.
That's just the way they would say it. Something that is being looked at all the time.
I'm just going to BDB here for a second. Apple of the eye, black, obscure, diminutive. Yeah, it does say diminutive form, ish, the little man of the eye, the pupil or ball, hence the middle of the man, black, obscure. I mean, that's weird. So why do they call it the little man? Because maybe they believe.
It's just a phrase. It's like you say dodaim, which means has to do with what do they translate dodaim as? That's like
dodaim, mandrake.
Yeah, mandrake. But the word dod has to do with something that's beloved or love, and so they call it love apples or something like that. But different languages have different ways of expressing the same idea. It doesn't have to be, an exact translation.
Sure, but
we say apple of the eye, and then here it says the ishon. I know.
Yes, but I'm trying to figure out why they would call it. Why they would relate it to.
I don't know. It's the same in
guessing,
Arabic. You say insan al-ayn, which means the same way, and why I don't know. But they actually have insan al-ayn.
I'm going to guess that maybe they believe that maybe the eye that on the pupil was a little picture of everything that was seen outside, or something like that. Or maybe they believe that inside the eye, a small version of what you saw outside was created, or something along those lines. And Ishon maybe relates to seeing a man outside that becomes a little man in pupil of the eye or inside the eye. I don't know. That's speculation.
The way I see it is this: when we say the apple of the eye is something precious, something that you hold in front of you and you observe as something good or precious or wholesome, whatever. The Ishon, even though it's diminutive, it doesn't necessarily have to mean the little man. It can mean like the precious person of his eye. And
okay, maybe
like when we say Robert or Robbie, for instance, Robbie is just a diminutive of Robert, and that's just an endearment expression of endearment, not necessarily that you're belittling somebody small, but it's just a term of endearment.
Okay.
So That's the way I look at it here. Ishon just means a special person of his that he holds in his eye, because we see in earlier places like the land of Israel, he keeps it before his eyes from the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
Okay, but what would that mean, a special person of his eye? If you're saying Ishon means a special person. Why? Why would they choose that as a...
The Israelites are considered the chosen people, after all.
Yes, but why would it be shown in... Hold on a second. Yes, but you're saying that because it's saying that the Israelites are special people, that therefore God is looking at the Israelites and saying it's the little man, the little precious man of his eye?
Well, I mean, even after all the crap that Israel did to God, you know, he didn't destroy them completely because he loves the people of Israel.
No,
it's not that they're any better than any other people, but they are the people that were chosen, and it wasn't that they were chosen because they were the most righteous or the most numerous people, because it clearly says they're the most hard-headed group of people on the planet. But even so, he cares for the Israelites.
Yes, but I'm speaking specifically about the phrase "ishon eno." So you're saying that your interpretation and here, okay. So your interpretation of
he protects them as something special.
Yes, but why? What does the phrase "the little man of his eye"? How does that imply something special? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know.
That I'm asking specifically about that phrase. So
I just don't know how Apple. What's an apple got to do with being anything?
Who cares what who cares what English?
Because that's a similar phrase. They translate it as the apple of his eye. You know, what does an apple have to do with anything? You know, that's just something you eat and you toss it out and fertilize the ground.
I'm sure there's
we have different ways of expressing terms of endearment depending on what language you're in. You don't necessarily say apple of the eye in Hebrew. It's Ishon Einav.
Yes, but I'm sure that if we were to look up where the phrase apple of the eye comes from, there's some reason for it somewhere, right? And maybe there's not, because English, yes, but it comes from somewhere. And I'm asking where the phrase Ishon Eno comes from in Hebrew, but we should just move on. Anyway, okay. Verse 11. Kinesher Ya'ir Kino, as a, how do you say in English again? An eagle. Rouses his nest, Avgozlav,
his younglings.
You know that, that is filled with his younglings. I would say
younglings.
Kinesher Ya'ir Kino, Avgozlav Yirachef. He hovers above his chickadees. Yifros Knafav, his little his little eagle D's. Yifros Knafav. He spreads out his wings. Yikachehu, Yisa'ehu al evrato, and he takes him and he lifts him up on his.
They are taken and they are lifted up. Those are nifals.
Are they?
Yeah, he is taken. Yikachehu. Oh, that might not be. Yeah, I think that is it. Yeah, that's a nifal. And so it's Yisa'ehu. He is lifted up and he is taken. Al Ivratho. Those are supposedly the wing, the feathers on the tips of the wings.
Pinions. They usually translate as pinions. Whatever the heck pinions means, I don't even know.
Yeah, those are the long feathers at the end of the wings of like eagles, and that's what they use to actually glide. Without those, they wouldn't be able to glide.
So again, just to dig deep a little bit, since this is it's only one chapter and there's a lot of strange words here. So Yifros Knafav. So you're saying that Yikachehu and Yisa'ehu are Nif'al? Are you sure about that? Yifros Knafav.
No, Yikachehu. Yeah, okay, that's a call. It says here it's a call.
He shall take him. He shall take him. And he shall carry him, right? It's a future third person singular.
Yeah, that's right. The Dagish is there because of the Lamed and the Noon. Yeah.
Okay, got it. The lama drops out in the future, and then it's
that's
replaced
why
with
you have the dagish
kuf,
there.
and the nun drops out in the yisayehu, and it's replaced with the dagish and the sin.
Yeah.
Okay. Kanesher ya'ikno al gozlav yerachef ifros knafav kachehu yisayehu al evrato. So I guess it's when it's talking about the yikachehu, he shall take him and he shall lift him up on his pinions.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's speaking about Israel in that case, right? Would you agree with that, or it's hard to make out?
Because it says it's the same subject of Yom Sa'ehu. He found him in the wilderness.
Right.
And he's talking about Yaakov. Yaakov is the personification of the people of Israel.
Right.
And
hey, we finally agree. We finally agree on a verse. So just to render another translation of that, Kinesher Ya'ir Kino al Gozlav, as an eagle rouses up her, rouses up his nest. Al Gozlav Yerachef. Is it? Wait a second. Is it Kinesher Ya'ir Kino al Gozlav, or is it Kinesher Ya'ir Kino, comma al Gozlav Yerachef?
Yeah, it's Kinesher Ya'ir Kino, comma al Gozlav Yerachef. And that's also, you could actually put a semicolon there. Yifros Kinafav Yikahehu Yisaehu al Ibrafo.
Okay, and what blocks off the kino from the Kinesher Ya'ir Kino from the Al Gozlav Yerachef? It's the two dots over the nun in kino.
Yeah, the Zakif Katan is what that's called.
That's a Zakif. I really got to sit down and learn all of these one of these days. I really. So that's a Zakif Katan on kino. All right, so got it, and that serves as
Yeah, you have the Mehupak on the Yifros. You have the Pashta on the Kinafa. Zakif Katan on Yikahehu. You have the Tipacha on Yisaehu. And then you have the Siluk and Sof Pasuk on the Ivratho.
And the Zakif Katan on the Nun, that serves as, it's a minor disjunctive, I'm going to guess.
So you have when you start at the beginning, you have Kanesher, and the reason why you have two pashtas here is because the pashtas was considered post-positive. It comes on the last letter of the word, not on the accented syllable. And so when the word is not accented on the last syllable, then you have to have a secondary accent so that you know which syllable is actually accented. This is a seglet. All seglets are accented on the syllable before the final syllable. And so that's why you have an extra pashta over the noon in Kanesher. And then you have Ya'ir with what's called a monach, that's a conjunctive accent. And then you have Kinno with the Zakif Katan, which is a disjunctive. And so that would
the conjunctive under the ayin that's connecting the Ya'ir to Kinno, you're saying.
Yeah, and so Kinno actually ends the clause. And so even though you say Kanesher Ya'ir Kinno, comma. Al-Ghazalab, this is a tipacha, and this is normally seen as a disjunctive, but because you have what's called an empty clause, the athnachta doesn't have a conjunctive accent. So that means the tipacha in this instance acts as a conjunctive. So it's al-Ghazala Yerahef. So that would be one clause.
Got it. And go ahead for the rest of the sentence if you don't mind parsing this. I really respect your knowledge of these things, and it's something I really need to sit down one day and gain further knowledge of. But in the meantime, I defer to you because you've studied this extensively. So if you don't mind going ahead with the rest of the sentence and just parsing it.
Yeah. So you have the kanesh here, like I said, this is the pashta. That's also a disjunctive, but it's a very, very minor disjunctive, and the entire clause is actually determined. The end of the clause will be on the Zakif Katan, which is the next major pause. So you know that's the end of the clause. So you have kanefer ya'ir kino, and just like we have what's called prepositional phrases in English. When we have an introductory, it's called an introductory clause with a prepositional phrase. Like when you say in the beginning, you always put a comma there. It's the same thing here. Kanesha has an eagle. Yeah, Yirkino. He arouses his nest, comma. And then you go, now, like I said, because this is empty clause, then the typica on the Gozalav will act as a conjunctive. So even though it's a disjunctive, in this instance it acts as a conjunctive. So you have Al Gozalav Yirahev, which would be all one clause.
And they go on.
Yifrosh Kenafav Yikahehu. So you have Yifros, which means he spreads with a mahupach, that's the conjunctive accent. So
that's the thing of the sign under the resh you're talking about.
Yeah, and so it lets you know that that's attached to the next word, so that you know that Yifros is speaking specifically of his wings. So he spreads his wings, Yikahehu, and taking him. Then you have Yisraehu al Ivrato, and then you have another empty clause in al Ivrato. So you have the siluk, which is the final conjunctive in any sentence, any verse. And normally you have what's called a meracha, that would be the final conjunctive here. But because there's no final conjunctive, then the typica, which is always the last disjunctive before the end of a clause, it comes directly before the athnachta. That means you'll never use like a zachef katan or zachef gadol or revi or anything after the typica. The next disjunctive would be either the athnachta or the siluk. But anyway, so you know that the Yisraehu al Ivrato constitutes one single clause because it's an empty, what's called an empty, I can't remember the phrase, but they, in fact, older grammarians called them kingdoms. Each disjunctive was either a king, a duke, or whatever. And so they considered the area of its control as a kingdom, a dukedom, or whatever. And here, this would be a kingdom. And because the kingdom was empty, meaning he doesn't have any servants, which would be the conjunctive accents, or all servants, then the typica would act in the place. So that's how that works. So you have, like here, the verse 12, Adonai, Tipacha, okay? Then you have Bedav Yanhinu, okay? Adonai alone guided him, okay? And on Adonai, you have the Tipacha, which constitutes the first comma or the pause in the verse. And that would constitute definitely a pause because you have the monach under the dad. So that's not an empty part there. The athnachta actually has a certain. So you have to treat that Adonai, comma, Bedav Yanhinu. Adonai, he alone guided him. Well, Emmo, and there was none with him, or there was not with him, El Nechar, a foreign deity. And so here we have Ein Emmo, you have the Meracha and Tipacha, the Meracha under Ein, the Tipacha under the Immo, and then you have the Meracha again. The Meracha will always be the final conjunctive before a siluk, and the monach will always be the final conjunctive before a athnachta. That's how. Cool. But that just works for punctuation on pauses. It sets the clauses, helps you understand what clauses go together, what are either the major clauses, the subordinate clauses, and all that stuff. Verbal clauses, nominal clauses, prepositional clauses. And again, that is only the opinions of the master, how they understood it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So now we're on 13.
Mm-hmm.
על במופעי ארץ ויאכל תנובות שדי וינקהו דבש מצלע ושמן מחלמיש סור. So you have halamish, and then you have, this is construct, so this is halamish sur. So he made him ride upon the high places of Eretz, which is not definite, it just means a land. And he fed him with the produce of the field. This comes from the word nuv, which means something that sprouts. He caused him to suck honey from a rock, mitzela, rock, and oil from flints of rock. Or actually, just talking about sometimes, it doesn't necessarily mean flint. It just means the hard parts of the rock. حمعات بقار وحليب صون إم حيلر كريم وإيليم بني بشان وعتوذيم إم حيلر كليوت حتى. That's also a strange phrase. ودام عناف تشتي خامر. And so cream of the herds and milk of the flocks with fat of rams of Bashan, and Atuth are the male goats. Is a female goat. Atuth here is the male goats, with the fat of the kiliot heta, which specifically means the kidneys of the wheat, but it's talking about the kernels of wheat here. And Dama'ina, which means the blood of grapes. Tishdei Chamer, he drank Chamer. He drank Chamer, and that's also strange. Tishdei Chamer.
Yeah.
Anyway, drinks. Chamer is Chemer. Chemer has a commas here because of the siluk. It's in pause. Anytime you have a singular in pause, it will become a comment. So you have Chemer is actually here Chamer, and that's talking about fermented wine.
I'm sorry, I'm just right in the middle of something else. I'm going to join you in 1 second. I'm just trying to fix something here. All right. Yeah, but you can go on. I'm trying in 1 second.
So we have next verse is 16. Nope. Take the bet. It's 15. ويشمن يشرون ويفأت شمنت عفيثة كثيفة ويتوش الوخ أصاحو وينبل سور يشوعهم. And so it says Yeshurun, which is another name for Israel, Yeshurun, became fat and obstinate. You became fat. You became Ava. That's I think Ava means yeah, also means become fat. You became thick, and you became obstinate, and you basically left off the God who made you, Allah Asahu, the God that made him. وَيَنَبِّلْ, and he made, or he considered foolish, Sur Yeshua, the rock that saved him. يَكْنِئُهُ بِزَرِيمٍ, he made him jealous with foreigners. Here he's talking about foreign gods. And Yeshurun is the one here who's talking about he made him jealous. So Yeshurun made God jealous with Zarim, which means foreign. It's plural, foreign. Zar is foreign, Zarim is plural, which means foreign entities here. And we'll see that in a minute. بِثُعِذَوْ يَحْإِسُهُ, and with Thu'iva, with hateful, despicable, abominable things, he provoked him. يَذْبَحُ لِشَيْدِينَ لَا إِلَهَ, and he sacrificed to Shaydim. Shayd is what would be considered a local deity. In those days, every locality had their own little local deity, and that's what we're talking about, Shaydim.
So, okay, wait a second here. Wait a second here, because I was talking to someone about this the other day. So, Shaydim.
Yep.
So Shaydim is usually understood, at least in modern Hebrew, as demons.
Yep, that's what most people consider to be demons. However, demonology developed with in later rabbinic writings and in Christianity, and so forth. The word shed comes from the Akkadian, which originally meant a local entity. It didn't make a difference whether it was good or bad. It was just a tribal deity, is basically what it was.
Well, wait a second. Let me just see here. Yeah, again, here I'm just going to look at the BDB again, and it says it comes from a loan word from Assyrian Sedu, a protecting spirit, especially of bull colossus, Ba'am. Compare Aramaic, and it's a Sheda, demon. Phoenician proper name, Gadshad. Okay. Originally showed. Demon is malignant from Hebrew shud. 1 second here. Shud. Primitive root. Alrighty. So you're interpreting this as just a local god. He's B'chud Shadim.
Yeah, and you could just look at it as basically idolatry, because it says that earlier it says that they shouldn't sacrifice to the Si'arim, which are goats, and that in fact they call them I think the Seder is this half goat, half man deity or something like this. That's even amongst the Greeks. And basically it's just idols. They're not God, they're idols. And this is idolatry, is what he's talking about. They're sacrificing to idols, to the local deity, wherever they happen to be. Doesn't make any difference. There's not any specific name mentioned. That are not God. Gods that they did not know. Elohim lo yidahum. Gods they did not know. Chadashim mikarov ba'u. New things that are recently mikarov, which lately.
Yeah, newcomers.
Yeah, they have come.
Literally.
Lo si'arum avofeihem, which their fathers didn't even consider.
Okay, so let's, okay, Yisbachu l'shedim lo Eloha Elohim. Okay, one second. Yisbachu l'shedim lo Eloha Elohim. Lo Eloha Elohim lo yad'um hadashim mikarov ba'u lo sa'arum avotechem. So again, from the punctuation here, so it's Yisbachu l'shedim lo Eloha, right? And then you have that zakif katan over the lamed in Eloha, so that represents at that point a comma, correct? So the first phrase.
The first clause is Yisbachu, they sacrifice.
Right.
Okay, or they will sacrifice. L'shedim lo Eloah, to these local deities that are not God. So you have two different clauses. They self-sacrifice.
Got it.
To these local deities that are not God is the second clause. And you have Elohim, a pause, and then you have Lo Yadum, gods that they did not know. And then you have Chadashim Mekarov Ba'u. Then you have Chadashim, which is a minor pause, and Mekarov Ba'u is the clause itself. So the main clause altogether will be Chadashim Mekarov Ba'u.
Right.
Lo Si'arum, that's a clause by itself. And then you have Avothechem.
And in Yisbachu, over the het, that diamond, what is that?
That's called the Revi.
And what is its service?
The Revi, basically it's a minor disjunctive, and it is in the realm of the zakif katon.
Got it. Okay, so the proper way to parse this verse would be Yisbachu l'shedim lo Eloha, Elohim lo yadum, chadashim mikarov ba'u lo sa'arum avotechem. Okay, got it. All right. So now this word sa'arum, we should investigate a little bit. Who the heck knows what that means? And you had some interpretation before. Maybe you want to give it.
Yeah, the word sa'ar, whenever you have loan words in Semitic languages, sometimes the letters change. They will still be the same siblings. Fa and Sheen are still basically the same dental letters. But for instance, you have shur or sur, and you have fur in Aramaic. And so you have the sheen or sin becoming a foul. Same thing happens between Hebrew and Arabic. The sin often becomes a sheen. When you say shalom in Hebrew, you say salam in Arabic, but it's the exact same word, it means the same thing. And so you have here a word, si'ar, which is very rarely used. I think this might be the only time it's used as a verb here. But it's often used in Arabic. And for instance, I mentioned to you earlier a couple of verses in the Quran. I'm not promoting the Quran. I'm only doing this to show the similarities of the word. And so it's وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. So when it is said to them, don't spread mischief in the land, قَالُوا, they say, إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ, we are only those who do good. أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ, aren't they the ones who are really doing that which is not good, spreading mischief? وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, but they don't perceive it. They don't understand it themselves. They don't consider it. They're doing something wrong, and they're saying, oh, we're the ones who's really doing what's right, but they're actually the ones who are doing the wrong, and they just don't realize it themselves. And so that's how I look at this word, lo shi'arum abothechem, as being, they didn't even consider them. They didn't have any thoughts of them because they're talking about gods that they didn't know. They're brand new, and so their fathers would have had no knowledge of them. Lo se'arum avotechem.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay. The standard interpretation here is did not fear them. And there's a bunch of verses with the same root, but okay, let's forge ahead. Verse 18. Tzur yadcha teshi v'tishkach el mecholalecha. So the rock of your youth. I'm not sure what teshi is. I'm gonna look it up.
It comes from Nisa.
Here they say it comes. If here it's a hapax legamaton, according to
Shia or something.
Yeah, shaya, which means to forget. That's what they claim, and it appears only in Deuteronomy 32:18, according to again the BDB and Strong's, whatever it's worth, and it means to forget or be unmindful of. BDB says of certain. I'm sorry. It says imperfect with verb only. Okay, whatever. So they interpret this as forgotten. So tzur yadcha teshi, you've forgotten. Tishkach, and again, because we have the parallelism here between teshi and tishkach, maybe that supports it even further. Tishkach el mecholalecha, and
the one who labored, who was in labor with you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Yeladecha is one who gave birth to you. Mecholalecha is the one who actually was in labor with you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 1 second here. 1 second. And they're related to the underlying verb of lachul, to wait, or to bear, the one who bore you, who waited upon you.
Yep. I'm going to take a short break. I'll be right back.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'm gonna turn my mic off, but I'll still be able to hear you.
All right, no problem. Sounds good. Okay, so let's forge ahead. Tzur yadcha teshi. So let's parse this again. So tzur yadcha teshi, the rock of your youth. Teshi, you have forgotten. According to the BDB here, teshi is the underlying verb is shaya, and this verb appears only once in the entire Tanakh. It's a hapax legamenon, it's called hapax legamenon, and it appears only once in the entire Tanakh, which always means that it's a educated guess at best, but they interpret this as forgotten. So you've forgotten the rock of your youth, v'tishkach, and here that means and you have forgotten. So again, that's because of parallelism. Often the Torah will have verses, 2 or more verses, as we saw earlier, with the different types of rain in verse, where is it? In verse 2, Deuteronomy 32:2. We have different types of rain or rain-associated events that are in parallel with each other. And here we have parallelism, again, between teshi and tishkach. Those are the two verbs in the sentence, the only two verbs in the sentence. So, tishkach, and you've forgotten, which again leads one to interpret teshi as also a type of forgetting. El mecholalecha, the one who bore you. And let's just analyze this verb, mecholalecha. So the underlying verb is mecholel, and we have the repeated lamed, right, which means usually some kind of intense or modification of the underlying verb from that, which is, again, according to the BDB, which is lachul, and lachul means to wait. And there are many verses with the verb lachul. So let's just take one for instance, which would be one of my favorite ones, when they killed Akash, when they killed. Let me just open it up here. Where'd it go? So many windows open now. Right. Judges 3:25. So Yachilu ad Bosh. So the underlying story here is we've got this. Wait, just open it up here. 325. 1 second. 1 second here. Where did that go? One second. I'm sorry, not Nakash, Eglon. That's what I meant to say. So Ehud goes to kill Eglon, and he sneaks into the, he says he has a secret message for the king. King lets him up to the upper chamber, and then Ehud kills him in his fat stomach, and he's so fat that the fat closes in around him. And then Ehud sneaks out of the upper chamber and flees, crosses the river. I can't remember what river, but it mentions the river, passes the Imz, escapes Sudan. Okay. At any rate, so now Eglon, who's dead, is just sitting in the upper chamber, and his guards eventually say, what's going on with Eglon? And they assume first that he's, taking a long, we say this deathly, a long shit. And they just wait and wait and wait. They're like, geez, really got, he really must have overeaten this time. This big old fat ass really taking one hell of a shit this time. So we're just gonna wait a little while longer. And then it says here in where do we go here? So many windows open again. Oh geez. Wait a second here. Here we are. And it says in Judges 3:25. Ad Bosh. They waited until it was embarrassing. And he didn't come out. So they opened the doors of the upper chamber. And they took the key. And behold, their boss was dead on the floor. So and the verb here is vayachilu ad bosh. They waited until it was embarrassing, until they could no longer stand the embarrassment. And this is related to the verb that we see here, ironically, because this is a very good context. So you've forgotten the God who bore you, who gave birth to you. And this verb here is michol alecha, literally one who gave birth to you. Cha at the end represents you, and micholel comes from that underlying verb lachul, which means to wait, but has a repeated lamed, which means usually like an intensification or a modification of the original underlying verb. So here micholel is translated as to bear or to give birth to, and so basically coming from the underlying verb lachul, to wait, just as Eglon's servants waited for him to come out of the bathroom. But here with the repeated lamed, it means, in other words, wait until the child is born, to bear, to give birth to. And I like doing that kind of analysis because A, it really gets the meaning of the word, and number two, let's coast around a little bit in the Tanakh, which is one of my favorite things to do. So that's that. I think Yaakov is back. Yaakov, anything you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. Did you? We were waiting for you until it got to come back until it got a little bit embarrassing.
That's bullshit.
All right.
I had a little bit too much.
So I don't know where you went. I'm just making a joke. All right. So verse 19. Yar Yehovah v'yinatz mikas banav u'benotav. Okay. So Yehovah saw.
One of the rare verses that actually have sons and daughters together.
That's a good point. Anywho, so God saw, Yehovah saw, and what he saw that his children had forgotten him, Yinatz, and he became angered, or Yinatz, not angered, but he, I guess, rejected them, you would say, or something along those lines. Rejected them. Spurned. I don't even know what spurned means, but sounds good. Sounds better than reject. And he spurned them. I do know what spurned means. He rejected them. Banav ubenotav, from his great anger towards his sons and daughters. And that is verse 19. I'm going to go again to the Robert Alter for 1 second, just for
The ka'as is
kicks and giggles.
The ka'as is the provoking, because they provoked him. You see that up above. Yisrael, they provoked him with their to'eva.
Yeah, the Robert
with
Alter
the provocation of the sons and the daughters.
And I'm just gonna 1 second here. This is 32. I'm sorry, where were we? We're in verse 19. So the Lord saw and he spurned from the vexation of his sons and daughters. That's how Robert Alter interprets it. So, and the NIV, for the heck of it, says the Lord saw this and rejected them because he was angered by his sons and daughters. Similar interpretation. Okay, verse 20. And he said, I shall hide my face from them. And I'll see what will happen to them in the end. Right? Acharitam, Acharita Yamim, the final thing. Yeah, what the end will be. Ki dor tavuchot hema, because they are a rebellious generation, or a generation of upheavals, an upheavaling generation, a generation which causes upheavals. Literally, lafoch means to turn over. That's the word that's used when with a Sodom and Amorah, they were overturned. So they are a tumultuous, maybe you could say, or an upturning, an upheavaling generation. Just made up a new word, upheavaling. Kidor taufochot hema, banim lo amun emun bam. They are sons that there is no faith in them. They are faithless children.
Boy,
and that's it. Yeah.
And that's before Moses died. Now this is
right.
Because remember we read last week. He says, "I know what's going to happen after I'm dead."
Right. Yeah, but God, what do you really think of us, God? Don't hold back. Tell. But what do you really think? Okay, verse 21. Him kin uni below el. They made me jealous with a no God below el. Ki asuni b'havlehem. They angered me with their meaninglessness, their stupidity, their emptiness. It's the same thing as hevel havalim. They usually translate it as vanity of vanities. Yeah, with their vanities. But it's a stupid translation. It really means they're wisps of nothing. Their nothingness. Yeah, they angered me with their nothingness. Ani kem akni'em. I'm sorry. Ani akni'em belo'am, and I will
make them jealous.
Yeah, I will take revenge on them, I guess you could say, or make them jealous, I guess. I will make them jealous with a non-nation. V'goy naval achisem, with a despicable nation or despicable people. I will anger them. And I wonder which nation he's referring to here, or just in general. There's so many. Yeah, right?
Today,
Babylon,
the current
Syria.
Nation is the Islamic nation.
I would say the current nation is the United States of America.
Oh, yeah, the current nation.
If you want to talk about a goy naval and a lo am, if there's one nation that fits into that definition, it's the United States of America. That is the definition of a lo am and a goy naval.
Any nation would do here.
Mm-hmm. America exporting its disgusting, filthy, shallow, meaningless, vile culture to the Middle East and to Israel, who worships the West, sucks off the teat of the West, and absorbs this disgusting culture of the goy naval known as the United States of America. Anyway, okay. So much for politics. verse 22. Yaakov, you want to take it away?
Yep. Ki eish qadaha ba'api, because a fire has been kindled in my nostrils. وَتِقَادَ عَادَ شِعُلْ تَحْتِيث, and it shall burn even unto the grave below. She'ol is just another name for the grave. وَتَقَالَ أَرِتْ وِذُلَيْهَا and it shall devour a land and its produce. وَتَلَحِيتْ مُصَدِ حَرِيم, and it shall even burn up the foundations of mountains. Mutzadeh Harim. Aspe alemo ra'ot chitse achalevam. I will multiply upon them evil. Chitse achalevam. My arrows shall finish them. He's going to finish them off with arrows. Oh, we lost Melech. I'll just wait a minute for Melech to come back. If he doesn't come back, then I will finish this off. Looks like Melech might not be coming back, so I'll just finish it up. Mize Ra'av u'lechome Reshef wa'ketev Mariri wa'shin behimoth shalach bam. And so they shall be weakened with hunger, and basically reshef, which means they will be as fuel for fire, and ketev, which is destruction, ketev mariv, which is bitter destruction, washin behemoth, and literally a tooth of beast I shall send against them. Hamat zohali afar, with hamat, the burning of the things that fall along in dust, which is talking about hamat, is talking about the poison of the serpents. Mechus shakal harif, the sword will be outside, sent against him. Ume hadarim aima, and in the chambers will be terror. Gam bachor, gam betula. Also the bachor, which means the young men, the choice men, on also the betula, the virgins. Yonech emi sheva, the one suckling with the old man. Amarti af ehem ashbitha me'enosh zechram. So I said I would scatter them. Ahim, I will scatter them. Ashbitha, Me'enosh, Zikharam. And I will cause their remembrance to cease from among men. And this is interesting because this word Ashbitha is where you get the word Shabbat from. This is the Hillel, which means I will cause their remembrance to cease from among men. Lulle Ka'as Oyev Agur Pen Nakiru Soremo Pen Yomaru Yavenu Rama Wallo Adonai Pa'a Uzo. And basically says Lulai, which means perhaps, or would it, or for the reason that the provocation of their of the enemy, agur, which means I would fear, and this is really a strange thing to say about God. That if were it not for the provocation of the enemy, were it not that I fear the provocation of the enemy, pen yankuru saremo, less the yankuru saremo, that they're the ones who are their enemies, the ones who are distressing them, should yankiru, which means to understand falsely, understand incorrectly, pen yomeru yadeno rama, lest they should say that our hands are high, Ulo Adonai Pa'al Kusot, and that Adonai did not do all this thing to his people. Kigoy Ovav Eitzot Hema Wa'ain Bahem Tevuna, because they are a Kigoy Ovav, because a nation, or a destroyed nation, or a nation, Ovad Eitzot Hema, which has their council has been destroyed, or this is Eitza. Eitza is talking about their understanding or their council, what they consider together, it has been lost or destroyed, and they have no understanding. What aimed by him and not within them, Tevuna. Lu Hachamu Yaskiruzo. Lu is a word like what is that called? There's a name for it. I forget what it's called, but anyway, an interjection or something. Hachimu Yaskiruzo. Oh, if they were only wise and had they only understood this. Yavinu li Acheritham, had they not just considered their end. Eicha Yurdov Ehad Elef. How? Eicha, how? Oh, here's Melech again. So Eicha Yurdov Ehad Elef. So how does one person pursue 1,000? We're on verse 30, Melech. Ushinayim Yanisu Divava Im Loki Suram Micharam Adonai Histiram, or two cause a multitude to flee, had their rock not Micharam, which means to sell them, and Adonai shut them up. His Yiram caused them to be shut up.
I want that.
Huh?
One second. Hello?
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. My phone went dead.
I figure that's probably what happened. We're on verse 31.
Okay.
Kilo chisorenu suram, because our rock is not like their rock. Oyuvenu pelilim, and our enemies pelilim, which would be judges.
Okay.
Geffen, Sidom, Gifnam. This is verse.
Well, what does that mean? Oivenu plilim? Kilo, kitsorenu tzoram, but oivenu plilim.
Well, they're talking about their rock and our rock, so it's definitely talking about the deity of those nations that are putting them to flight. So when you talk about the judge here, they're judges, the Pelilim, and you could even think of it, Pelil, to be something that they pray to, because when we say to pray is mitpalel, same word, and so Pelil would be a passive, so it's something that's being prayed to. Oh, so you can basically say they're idols. Their rock is not like our rock. And our enemies, Pelilim, are just basically idols.
So Robert Alter, who I'm using today, maybe I'll use someone else next time, says would-be gods.
Yeah.
Would-be gods. And I think he has a footnote on that. Let's see what he says here. 31. Yeah. Our enemies would be gods. The second of the two Hebrew words here, Oivenu Pelilim, is a notorious crux, evidently already a source of puzzlement to the ancient Greek translators. The ostensible verbal root of Pelilim is related to the idea of judgment or assessment, but every attempt to construe the two words in light of that meaning seems strained. Tigai, I don't even know who Tigai is, but whoever he is, proposes an Akkadian cognate that means leader or guardian and serves as an epithet for deities. If one notes that Pelilim rhymes richly with Ililim, idols, and if one recalls this poet's verbal inventiveness in coining designations for the non-entity of the pagan gods, would-be gods is a distinct possibility. That's his interpretation. And he interprets that Pelilim as would-be gods. In modern Hebrew, Plili means criminal. So if you have a criminal case against you, it's called the tvia plilit, whatever it's worth. That's what they interpret in modern Hebrew. So the oivenu plilim. The NIV says for that verse, for the rock is not like our rock, as even our enemies concede. That's weird. I don't even know what that means. But it's important because this shows that nobody knows what the heck this means. The New Living Translation.
Palil is a passive, though. So whatever it is, we can.
Just 1 second here. So the New Living Translation, whatever the heck it's worth, says, oops, what verse is it?
Verse 31.
31. Verse 32, 31. But the rock of our enemies is not like our rock, as even they recognize. Okay, whatever. So, right, you're saying Palil is in the form of, let's see, what would you call it? It's like a,
Well, the root is palal, and it means to judge something. Palil is something that has already been judged, or they have
judgeable.
Been judged.
Let's say,
and
judgeable.
that's why they're translating. They've already judged this for themselves and have recognized the fact that their God is not like our God. and our enemies have already judged this to be correct.
Okay, perhaps. Okay, verse 32. Ki migefen stom gafnam umishadmot amorra anvemo inve rosh ashkelot morrot lamo. Now, I like this because it mentions a lot of plants, and plants is one of my big hobbies. So, growing plants and studying plants. So, migefen stom gafnam. So, from the grapevine of Sodom is their grapevine. Umi shadmot and shadmot. I'm not sure what that means. Fields, perhaps something along those lines.
Fields of Gomorrah. Yeah.
Interesting. Shadmot, and from the fields of Gomorrah, and from the fields of Gomorrah, comma or semicolon. That's the etnach under the resh. Anvemo, anve rosh, his grapes or his grape is are grapes of, and rosh
gall.
is, how do you say it in English again? Gall, right?
Gall.
Bitter. Gall, yeah. Rosh and le'ana, gall and wormwood, and gall is like bitterness. So bitter, grapes of gall or bitter grapes. Ashkerot morrot lamo.
Clusters.
Yeah, grape clusters are like grape bunches. Bitter grape bunches are theirs.
Yeah, are
for
bitter
them.
for them.
Yeah. Ashkerot morrot lamo, right?
And this next word, the Hamat Teninim, we read that back in verse 23 at the end, where it says, Im Hamat Zohar. The Hamat here literally means the heat, something hot, but it's talking about venom when it talks about these serpents.
Right. Right. So the venom of snakes, the poison of snakes is their wine. Rosh Tanim Akhsar, and the cruel head of pythons. And obviously, right here, this is where we get the English word python. Even though here
python.
Right, yeah, but here they're saying it's cobra, but it doesn't matter. That's where we get the English word python for sure. Yeah, python. A venomous serpent, perhaps cobra. Venomous serpent. Okay. Yaakov, 1 or 2 more verses, and then I'm gonna have to go because it's kind of getting late here.
Okay.
So
yeah, it's almost 7.
Yeah. Yep. It's getting there. So go ahead. You want to take the next one?
Let's see. Over at 34.
Yeah.
Hello. Who comes in Madi?
By the way, you're coming in very broken up. I don't know if it's coming from your side or if it's coming from my side, but
I don't know. I hear you okay. Maybe I got my book in the wrong place. So
maybe
because
it's coming
I got
up like
the mic down here.
There's a lot of like I don't know how to explain it. Static kind of on the line.
Yeah, that could be my battery going dead.
Could be. Yeah. All right. So maybe with 1 or 2 more verses, and then we'll wrap it up. All right.
So hello hu kamus immadi khatum bi'od sarothai. Is it not laid up beside me or with me and sealed among my treasures? And this is a cool phrase. I like this phrase. Is one of my favorite phrases. Lina qama wa shalayim. It's for me to avenge and to repay.
Yeah.
Li'ait tamud raglam. When they're at the time that their foot shall slip. Kikarud yom idam wahash atidot lamun. for the day of their calamity or misfortune is close. And the chash, so the thing, whatever, I don't know what it is.
It comes quickly.
Chash, yeah, it comes quickly.
Yeah. Their future.
Yeah, their future will come quickly for them.
Yeah, that which is good. That's what whatever's going to happen to them is going to come quickly to them. Is going to come upon them quickly. In other words, they're not going to know what hit them.
Yeah. Ki yadin Adonai ammo, because Adonai will judge his people. Wa al avadav yitnecham, and he shall repent himself, or
relent,
maybe have mercy upon his servants.
Yeah, yeah. Have compassion. The translator is.
Yeah. Ki yir'e ki azlat yad wa efes asur wa azuv. For his servants, and so when he sees that their power, maybe the power.
Yeah, azlat yad, their power is gone, basically.
Yeah,
I think.
So, and wa efes asur wa azuv, and Ephes means this kind of like aim. It means nothing. There's absolutely, extremely nothing to shut them up and to be left. Azuv, which is Atzur, shut up, and Atzuv, shut up and left.
I'll just read again the Robert Alter translation here. I don't want to rely on his translation too much, but one or two more for this poetic verse at least. So for his servants, he shows change of heart. When he sees that power is gone, no ruler or helper remains. He will say, "Where are their gods?"
Elohimu. Where is their God? Elohimu.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I just read the wrong verse.
No, you read it.
I did read the right one. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
You just kept on reading. The next verse too.
That was it.
Okay, got it. Elohimu sur hachsavo.
Right.
Hasayuvo. They trusted in him. Asher Halev Zivachemo Yochelu Yishtoyen Nasicham Yachumu Yazruchem Yehi Aleichem Sitra. Which the fat of the sacrifices they ate, and they drank the wine of their nesicham is where you a libation, I think is what's called, where you pour it out.
Yep.
Let them rise up and let them help you. Yaqumu وَيَعَزْرِهُمْ and let them help you. Let them be your sitra, which is interesting. I guess that means protection, if you want to look at it that way. In Arabic, we say sitra is something that you use to, almost like a shield, to shield you off from something else.
I think, sitra is, okay. I guess it comes from the word seter, right, which means hidden. And actually here, covering, hiding place, secrecy, right? So sitra, I guess, would be
something that hides them or shields them.
Yeah, right. Their shield, their hiding place, or the thing that hides them. Yep.
Look or recognize now that I am He, وَأَيْنَ Elohim عِمَّدِي, and that there is no God with me. Ani Amith, وأحيي محتي وأني إربح وإن ميادي متزيل. I cause to die and I allow to live. I wound and I also heal. And there is none that can rescue from my hand. And if you want, we can stop there.
I can go on a little bit if you want to finish off. It's, you know, if you want to just like read through to the end so we can say we did it, it's fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ki isa il shamayim yadi, because I will lift up to heaven my hand, وأمرتي حي أنوخي لأولام, and I shall say, I live forever. Im shenothi berach harbi, because when I take out, unsheath my sword, and I take hold of judgment. My hand takes hold of judgment. Ashiv naqam lisarai uli mishan I ashalan, and I shall return vengeance, and to those who hate me I will repay, or I will repay. Ashkir chitzai midam. Shecher means to be drunk, and so I will cause my arrows to be drunk with blood. Wacharbi tochal basar, and my sword shall eat flesh. Midam halal wa shivya, from the blood of those who are slain. Halal is like a dead body in the field in the war. Wa shivya, and of the captives. Meirosh pararot oyev. Interesting, from the head of the enemies who have been para'ot, which actually means to be let loose, who are, that's kind of a strange phrase. It just means from the chief of the enemies that were let loose, or whatever. Maybe they'll call them wild, because it says para means to be wild, and that's also interesting because we see that even though para'o is Egyptian, it's spelled with the same word, same root, para, which means to be wild or uncouth. Whenever it talks about letting the hair just grow wild, it uses the word para, also the verb para. Hardinu goyim ammo. Rejoice, nations, O nations, his people. Hardinu goyim ammo. Rejoice, nations, O nations, his people. Kidam abadav, for the blood of his servants. Yakom will be avenged. No, Nakom, Nakom. Yakom, he will avenge. Wanakam yashiv lisara, and he will return vengeance upon his adversaries. Wachiper atmatho ammo, and he will basically cover or expiate, if you want to say that, make some sort of covering or a restitution for the land of his people.
Yep.
So what would you think about here with the goyim ammo?
All right, let's see here. All right, this thing. All right, wait, where is that verse again?
43.
Right. Let's scroll up for a second to look at some. Haminu goyim amo kidam avadav mikom edakam yashiv letzara v'chiper admato amo. Let's see here. Kidam avadav mikom v'nakam ישיב לצריו וכיפר אדמתו עמו. Yikom v'nakam yeshiv. 1 second here. I'm going to give an answer a bit more context. I just want to see one thing. I don't know. And he will clearly, I mean, chiper, he expiates, he atones the land of his people. So
how would you translate the first clause?
Which the Harninu Goyim Amo?
Yeah.
Kidam Avadav Yakom Vinakam Yeshiv Tzarav Tiper Admato. I don't know. I don't have a translation for that because I'm not picking up on what Harninu means. I really don't know.
That comes from Raram, which means to sing.
What's that?
Sing. To sing. Renan means to sing.
Okay.
Arninu, call singing Goyim Ammo.
Okay. Harninu Goyim Amo. Kidam Avadav Yikom V'nakam Yeshiv Tzarav Chiper Admato Amo. Harninu Goyim Amo. Harninu Goyim Amo. So Harninu. Okay, so that's clearly that's a command form in the third person. Harninu Goyim Amo. So I guess it's a command to the nations to sing.
Okay.
Over his people. I'm not sure. I really can't make much out of it. Why?
I was just curious. Okay, so thanks, bro.
Okay.
Actually, this will be the last of the Parashath. Anyway, this is the last few verses. ויבוא משה וידבר את כל דברי השירה הזו באוזני העם, הוא והושע בן נון. So Moses came and he spoke the words of, or all the words of the song, in hearing or in the ears of the people. He and Joshua the son of Nun. ויחל משה לדבר את כל הדברים האלה לכל ישראל, and Moses finished speaking all these words or all these things to Israel, to all of Israel. ויאמר עליהם שימו לבבכם בכל הדברים אשר אנוכי מעיד בכם היום, אשר תצוום את בניכם לשמור לעשות את כל דברי התורה הזו. And he says to them, set your hearts to all these things that I am calling to witness against you today. That you shall command your children to be careful to observe all the words of this Torah. Kilo davar arehu mikem, because it is not an empty. This is a word that means empty. I guess you could say it means vain, but I think it's empty because whenever you're not supposed to appear empty-handed. But I come, I think.
Right.
Anyway, because it is not an empty thing for you. Kihu hayekim, because it is your life. Uvad dabar hazeh. And with or by means of this thing, تأرخوا يميم على الأدماء, you shall lengthen your days upon the land, أشر أتم عوبرين اليردين شامة لرشدة, to where you are crossing over the Jordan to go there to possess it. ويدبر أدوناي الموشي بعدسم حيوم هزي لمور. And so Adonai spoke to Moses in that same day, saying, علي الحار عبريم هزي حر نيبو أشر بعرس مؤاب أشر على بني يريحو ورأي את ארץ כנען אשר אני נותן לבני ישראל לחוזה. And he says, ascend to the mountain of Avarim, to Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, that is opposite, or that is before Jericho, and look at the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel as a possession. Umuth Bahar Asher Ata'ole Sham وهي السيف إلى عميخ كأشر ميت أهارون أخيخ بخور ههار وهي السيف إلى عماف, because you die on the mountain which you are ascending there, and safe and be gathered to your people, as Aaron died, your brother died in the mountain of Hor and was gathered to his people. And this is the reason why. على عشر معلتم بي بثوق بني إسرائيل بمي مريبات قديش بذبار سين. على عشر لو كدشتم أوتي بثوق بني إسرائيل, because you rebelled or you were disobedient against me amongst the people of Israel at the waters of Meribah, of Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not sanctify me amongst the children of Israel. Ki neved תראה את הארץ ושמה לא תבוא אל הארץ אשר אני נותן ישראל. For Benegev, which means to be from in front of something. When you're standing like before something, you shall look at the land, or you shall see the land, but you shall not go to the land. I'm giving to the children of Israel. And that is the end of Parashath HaAzinu. Very interesting. Very strange.
Yep. And that's that.
Yeah. Another wonderful Torah study. I appreciate it.
Me too. I love these Torah studies, and I hope they start catching on. And I hope more and more people will start joining us.
Even if they don't, as long as the internet exists, at least the things we do today will outlive us, hopefully.
Probably. Unless YouTube is trashed by, haters of...
I still have the originals. So even if YouTube's trashed, I still have the original videos. So.
Right.
I can upload them anywhere.
That's good. Anyway, all right, Yaakov, it's getting late for you, and it's getting late here, so.
Yep, I can actually say Shavua Tov now.
Oh, really? No, I can't.
Yeah, it's just a few more minutes, and Shabbat will be over here.
Cool. All right, Yaakov. So another great study, and we will pick it up again next week.
Yeah. Next week we will be in Vozot HaBaracha. This is the blessing. So that'll be another good one. That's going to be that'll be another one kind of like this one because you'll have
Right.
one those single, what do you call that?
Those
The haplex
Hapex
or whatever.
Hapex legomenon, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Hapex legomenon.
You have a lot of those. This next one coming up too.
Yeah.
All right.
Hapex
So Shabbat
legomenon.
Shalom and Shavua Tov.
Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov. And you're gonna
I'll get everything.
upload to YouTube. All right, yeah, Shabbat Shalom.